Your neighbor just joined the meeting.
My neighbor? Mariana?
Yeah.
Is she here or is she in our meeting room? Oh, my.
I invited Dan at the last minute thinking, I need 50 people this meeting tonight. How do I do that?
Oh, good. Well done.
Oh, is that what's behind that?
Right.
That's 50 people. Good deal. You have people in the waiting room right now?
Yeah.
Is that how we do it?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and
I like that waiting room thing.
Hi, Don, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Don?
Yes, I can hear you, Sitsa.
Very good.
Oh, you know that.
Yes, yes. Thank you. You can't remember what? Oh, my God, I hear myself. No, I passed by,
You don't have your speaker set up.
Hello.
Agreement on board?
I'm gonna sign it because my cell is off.
Behind this.
So Rachel wrote a letter to me,
Rachel Punching?
regarding the water. So I'll give it to you.
So I'm not clerking the meeting,
Oh.
Laura is,
Yeah.
and let me, I could scan it into her. And let her do that. Let's see. I'll do that.
Hmm?
Dr. Vanda also. I need to start writing myself notes when I pass through and need to talk to people.
Most of the time I think about it when I'm driving.
Yeah.
Oversight committee, community hall. Yeah. She usually watches BSC
Okay.
live streams.
Yeah. Yeah, she can't, it's hard for her to do the Zoom, she told me.
I just found out too that there's a history of participants in a meeting,
What?
in a Zoom meeting.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, you can go back and look at who all was on the Zoom.
I'm on a call.
We've got a good crowd.
It's my fault. I invited the CSMB students.
Oh, I thought it was our city, our concerned citizens. Hmm? Is that Cesar in yellow? Is it growing? Oh,
In the picture.
Did you get my message that Mariana Tomas?
yes, yes, yeah.
Cat stickies.
Um,
Laura.
Laura's here.
I usually have sticky set, Leslie, but
Oh, that's okay. I can write on the back of this. That is for
Did you
you.
guys squish together just a little
Oh,
bit?
sure, 6 feet.
6 feet?
what was that? Can we what?
Squish together just a little bit?
Squish together. Oh, okay.
Okay, here, I have sticky notes too.
All right. I think
Is that good?
thank you. Much better.
Oh, there I am.
Yeah. You want to say something?
Just an FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, is it time?
Yeah.
All right. So the City of San Juan Bautista Town Hall meeting with the City Council of Tuesday, October 6, 2020 is now in session. Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Mayor.
Oh, please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance
allegiance
to the United
to the
States of
United States of
America,
America,
to the republic
and
for which it
for which
stands,
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Okay, so now we do roll call. So, do I do the roll call?
No, I can do it.
Oh, Laura, are you here?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were here. Hi.
Ready? Ready. Mayor Edge,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jordan,
Here.
Councilmember DeVries,
Here.
Councilmember Flores,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. So now we go on to public comment. Public comment only on items on the agenda. And please hold your comment until after the presentation. Okay. So now we go on to discussion items. So discussion items are,
There you go. So tonight's town hall meeting. Right.
so then now we go on to our town hall meeting.
Right.
Okay, so, so the town hall meetings are for the free exchange of information of community-wide importance. The city council desires to receive input from the public to assist in choosing the best solution to the city's water issues.
Okay.
So is our water team gonna,
Thank you, Mary. Yes, our water team's on board, and I will start. Thank you for introducing our project today. This is a culmination of a lot of work, and we've done our best to keep our community informed, and so that's why we are scheduling a special town hall tonight, because we have a requirement, as we'll describe later in the report, to reach certain milestones in order to be in compliance with our regulators. So with that, I'm going to forward to the next slide. We've got about 25 slides, and then we'll have plenty of time for community conversation. So this is what we're doing tonight. The mayor has welcomed us to the town hall meeting, and I'm introducing the town hall meeting. I'll provide background and history, compliance with regulations, and then our consulting team, consisting of Carl Bajarki, our project manager in Public Works, retired Public Works director from Morgan Hill, who's with us tonight. Tony Akel Consulting, they're the firm that has been working since October with Carl and the city and city council to put together our water and wastewater master plans. And then Stantec is representing Akel Consulting, because they are the experts, and they have done what's known as a preliminary engineers report, and they have put different models together to help us decide on how to get our city into compliance with the regulatory agencies. So part of this report is designed for people who have been unable to attend, and this will get everyone caught up and on the same page. So we'll end with next steps and questions, of course. So with that, oh, there's Rochelle. Okay. Come down here, and we're already on the third slide. All right. So in general, our water systems in San Juan Bautista consist of 4 parts. Pardon me. Water source, our wells at this moment. Water distribution, how do we pump that water throughout our city, store it and pump it and make it available to our residents and business owners. And then we have a wastewater collection system, that brings it all to the wastewater treatment plant where it is treated. So these four elements are the key components of our water system. And of course, this is paid by residents through monthly rates. And it all goes into something known in my neck of the woods as an enterprise fund, meaning that the money spent, the money paid by residents in the form of rates is used solely for the purpose of improving our water system. So in February, that's hard to read this long, this is good one. In February and March, we conducted a resident opinion survey. It was part of our budget session to work on our strategic plan and get our goals in line for us. We received a very good response of 150 replies. And of course, I think everyone on this call today will agree that our number one strength is our small and historic town character. And then, as stated in the survey results, the biggest need is maintaining the city's infrastructure. And then the city's top priority is water. And during my interview, it was clear to me that water was our top priority. And so today is a big day for me. It's a culmination of a lot of work that we've done. And just a little bit of history for those who are unaware. Since 2000, the year 2000, the focus has been 1A, fixing the water source. We've gone through some terrible times in our city where we had nitrates in the water and we had moratoriums and we were giving away bottled water. And so we've done a lot to focus on our water source. So the focus is delivering clean, healthy water. It's always be priority one. Experienced licensed operator, daily testing and monitoring, and good working relationships with the State Water Drinking Division. That's where we're at now. Between 1990 and 2018, the city closed 2 wells, wells 2 and 3, and 4 actually, and added 2 new wells, 5 and 6. And we built a 1.2 million gallon reservoir on top of the hill by the Nyland properties on the other side of Highway 156. The distribution system, Section 1B, underwent a few upgrades to serve new homes, but still suffers from aged pipes and valves that continue to plague the oldest parts of the city. Iron in these pipes, on occasion, will cause the water to turn brown, especially following a repair or maintenance. The water status, we are carrying a debt for the next 27 years for the installation of the reservoir on top of the mountain, and it cannot be refinanced for another 5 years. So it's a tax-free debt, and it's locked up for 10 years. And after 5 years, we can look at refinancing it. And that's important to keep in mind because that will eventually potentially be a good cost savings. Interest rates right now are very low compared to what we're paying, about 5% on that debt. The city's iron and manganese plant is fully operational. I went into operation a year ago, September. Wells 1 and 5 are the primary sources of water for our city. Well 6 went into reserve status, unfortunately, in March due to high nitrates, which is why we had to close the other wells. So we have a history of well water with high nitrates. Attempting to replace about 10 valves a year. We were budgeting about $10,000 for that purpose. That will help us to control the impact of changes that we make to our system and keep it more localized. Right now, for example, on the 3rd Street project, when we attached the water valves, instead of keeping it to 1 or 2 blocks, it spread and it impacted more people than we thought because we had valves that were not operating the way they should. So that's one of our big strategies right now is making sure that our water valves are replaced and up to speed. An attempt at monthly flushing in the lines caused excessive brown water, so we need to regroup and restart this practice once we get the valve system in place. So the good news is the water master plan is complete with digital mapping and gives us a priority list of the first pipes that need to be fixed in the city and helps us set forth our CIP for water. On the wastewater side,
John, is there any
Yes.
way you can make it bigger so we can see it out here, read it?
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you could see it. I can see just the screen.
Zoom it.
Hi, this is Kevin. If you go to display settings at the top, do you see the display settings drop down?
Yeah.
Go ahead and click that and swap presenter and slideshow, and that should maximize it for you.
It minimized it. Okay.
Can they see it? I guess they couldn't see it.
No, now we see.
Barely see it.
Oh, yeah, yes. It's
There we
been
go.
done.
Is that helpful?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, definitely.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you for speaking up, Cesar. Appreciate it.
I
No
was
problem.
waiting to check here, didn't want to cut you off in the middle.
Well, I got to practice with the maintenance staff this afternoon, so I got this down.
All right.
Wastewater status. In the past 2 years, we've invested $600,000. Much of that went into sludge removal at our wastewater treatment plant. We replaced the old operator with the new licensed operator in 2018, and recently we extended their contract. They're doing great work for us, so that's a good relationship we have. We've repaired the plant to a level of service, volume, and capacity, and discharge quality equal to the original design, and that was a big goal. 2019 implemented a list station monitoring program and standard operating procedure program so that our wastewater lines are flushed. We don't have grease backing up in our downtown, et cetera. We've made some great improvements there. We've got a great team working on that. Wastewater master plan is completed, put the digital mapping needed to make sure that our collection system is being managed effectively. So the regulatory framework is, first, before I get into that, I do want to thank our maintenance staff. They've been really awesome. Heroes on Labor Day, keeping our wells flowing in the super hot weather. It's just been, we have a very dedicated maintenance staff, and I wanted to just tip my hat to them and their hard work, their teamwork especially. So moving on to the regulatory framework. Permits for water are issued by State Water Resources Control Drinking Water Division, and permits for wastewater are issued by the State Regional Water Quality Control Board in compliance with the Clean Water Act. The state monitors all city lab tests, monthly and annual quality assurance reports. Federal EPA works with the state when the discharge water is sent to a public waterway, which is what we do. We send our water to a creek. So we have a unique relationship with the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. The National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, the act itself, the NPDES Act, is monitors the city's discharge water being sent to the creek.
Hey, Don, I think we need to switch to the next slide.
Compliance with regulations? Okay.
It's not switching on the screen.
Yeah, dude.
It's on
I see
this
wastewater
screen.
status. I'm seeing wastewater.
You're on slide 7 for the rest of us out here in Zoom land.
Interesting. Because
All right.
I'm seeing slide, okay, I'm seeing slide 9 on my screen.
I got
Excuse me. So this often happens with our professors. Go ahead, try unsharing your slide and then resharing it.
Okay, thank you. I'm open to new ideas.
Anything gonna work.
Okay, there's slide 7.
We're on, yep,
We're on
that's
9.
what I'm seeing.
$600,000. Okay, so we talked about our wastewater status. And now we're on slide 8, regulatory framework.
It's working.
Okay, thank you for that tip.
So now we're
I'm still learning to Zoom after 30 meetings.
Yeah.
Compliance with regulations. Since 1987 and between 2000 and 2002, particularly since 2007, the wastewater discharge has degraded the water quality in the creek. I came across yesterday by coincidence a cease and desist order from 2000 where we had exceeded the chloride levels in our discharge into the creek. And that's significant because our industrial users did not come on board until 2002. So it's evidence that supports the idea that we were out of compliance before the industrial users came on board. Nonetheless, we have a lot of work to do with them as far as industrial permits and continued monitoring. So I wanted to make that point. And after making improvements to the plant, only salts remain as a compliance issue. So chloride and sodium and what they refer to as total dissolved solids, TDS. The plant is not designed to remove the salts, and the well water is hard and the source for most of the salt that comes into our system. So the water is salty as we remove it from the well, from the aquifer, and pump it to our residents. Residents rely on water softeners that discharge salt into our waste stream, and industrial users send very salty water to the city. Compliance with regulators. Regulators advanced their compliance tactics in 2018 and 2019. In June 2019, an unannounced inspection was held at the wastewater treatment plant on a day when our operator was on vacation. And anyway, it led to compliance orders being drafted and harsh penalties threatened in 2020. So in April of 2020, Vice Mayor I'm sorry, I'm getting some interference, so I paused for a minute. Are we okay? Okay, yeah, I was right on the Vice Mayor Jordan and Councilmember Freeman were appointed as subcommittee members. They've been a great support to me, and I really appreciate that. They've attended a lot of these bi-weekly meetings with the EPA and Water Board that have occurred every 2 weeks since March. And the City Council then began putting water for their direction on our council agendas every time we met. So maybe 20 times we've had water conversations in our City Council meetings, as you know. On August 26th, the city executed an administrative order of consent known as the AOC. That's basically a compliance order, and it's a compliance order that says, City, you and the EPA agreed to follow the schedule and reach these milestones. And it's fairly rigorous and gives us till the year December 2023 to resolve all of our water problems. So we think we're up to the task, because we'll describe in more detail later. The ongoing negotiations with the Water Board, however, are confidential, and we won't go into details on that. Just to know that we mailed out our household income survey, and that's part of this negotiation. If we can get that survey back from everybody, we can better understand where our city is, and maybe we stand to take advantage of our disadvantages. And so that's the point of the household income survey. EPA and AOC, these are some of the dates and some of the milestones we've already met. We're compelled to meet these milestones. We received our transmittal letter August 26th, and on August 24th, the AOC was signed by the EPA. September 1st, we certified that the ponds at the water treatment plant had been repaired. We also certified that the UV disinfection system there had been repaired. That had been repaired back in January in both of those systems. So we're in compliance with our wastewater treatment plant now, the way it's operating. September 15th, 2020, we submitted the master plans. The City Council accepted those 2 weeks ago. That was terrific. And then our next milestone is October 15th, where we have to submit a proposed compliance project. And so that's the purpose of this meeting, is to have the town hall conversation about different compliance projects that we've been studying, and bring those forward to the City Council next Tuesday on the 13th for approval and consideration. So the public and the City Council and everyone will get 2 shots at this, both tonight and next week. So again, we've completed our water and wastewater reports. So Steve, I think this is where you were going to continue the conversation.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. I was, this was your last slide, but I can finish up here.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyways, as Don mentioned, but by the way, my name is Steve Beck. I'm a senior principal with Stantec Consulting Services, and we were responsible for looking at these, doing this alternative analysis on what to do about getting the city back into wastewater compliance. And that kind of grew into not only looking at a solution for wastewater, but also looking at solutions for water for the city also. So part of the compliance strategy was to prepare what's called a preliminary engineering report, or PER. And this is a necessary document that is required by the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Development Department. We're applying for a grant with them to help pay for some of this project. We're eligible for the grant because we're considered, San Juan Bautista is considered a disadvantaged community. We're under the median income thresholds for that. So like Don already mentioned, the city has a 4-part system for compliance. And we really are looking at the emphasis here on this discussion tonight is look at the 2 parts that need to be fixed. And that's the water source and then the treated wastewater to meet our compliance requirements with our wastewater discharge permit. Again, the PER document is a very lengthy document, but it defines the issues and provides several alternatives for the city to consider. And then along with that, and we'll talk about this in a little bit here, is we're also pursuing putting together an industrial pretreatment program to deal with our industrial discharges. So next slide. So when we talk about salinity or salt, we're really talking about the dissolved minerals in the water, magnesium, potassium, sodium, chlorides and stuff like that. And as Don mentioned, the combined concentration of these minerals is referred to as the total dissolved solids, or TDS. And for San Juan Bautista, our TDS, our sodium and our chlorides have very high concentrations in the wastewater. And unfortunately, our existing wastewater treatment plant does not have the ability to treat these salts. And so they end up getting discharged into the creek, and we're currently violating for these 3 constituents. So the question is, providing the treatment to remove salts at the wastewater treatment plant can be very expensive, and oftentimes it's more cost effective to try to reduce the salt at the sources, at the source. And so this figure kind of illustrates, where the salt is coming from. So a significant portion of our salt is in our groundwaters, in the water we pump out of the ground. It has a lot of minerals in it that contribute to the TDS. It also, we're in an agricultural area, and the farms are applying fertilizers and stuff, and that stuff leaches into the groundwater. Also, our landscaping, the products we put on our landscape and stuff like that also do that. On top of that, when we apply water to farms and to landscape and stuff, some of that water is evaporated and it leaves the salt behind, and that contributes to concentrating the salt that we have. But there are other sources of salt too. The food that we eat, the personal care products, those type of items dump salt into the wastewater. But another source of salt comes from the individual water softeners, self-generated water softeners. As everybody knows, we have very hard groundwater in San Juan Bautista. And so a lot of homes and stuff have the self-generated water softeners. And so that contributes a significant amount of salt because it exchanges the constituents, the calcium and magnesium for sodium and chloride, and then that salt gets dumped into the sewer system. So this table right here, I'll just quickly wanted to show this. We ran a salt balance and to try to figure out where the salt's coming from and what concentrations and what loadings. And you can see on this that the 2 significant contributors to this are the self-generating water softeners and the industrial discharges. You can see that the chlorides and sodiums, the concentrations are similar, and the loadings are similar for this. As far as TDS, most of our TDS is coming from our groundwater, but also significant contribution from our industrial dischargers. Next slide. So here's a graphic of this. What I just wanted to point out with this graphic is that the industrial contribution to the wastewater treatment plant, on average, our flows are about 15% of the total flow, but the salt loading is much higher. It's about 30% the average based on the sampling data that we collected. And then during peak months, it can be as much as 50%. Again, so we have a significant contribution from our industrial discharges, but Don made a very important point earlier that eliminating our industrial discharge or reducing the salt doesn't get us completely out of the woods. There's other things that we have to do. Next slide. So we looked at a number of options, source control options on this. Again, the first thing that we're going to recommend, that we recommend in this report, is to do the industrial pretreatment and to the extent possible reduce the salt load from our industrial discharges. But in addition to that, we also want to look at source control of the salt. And so we have a number of options that we looked at in the preliminary engineering report. The first option, option A, was to look at the pellet water softening plant. A number of years ago, the city purchased a water softening plant, but it was never installed. And so we looked at the cost to repair and rehab that and see if that might be a cost-effective way to deal with this. It's important that that we understand that the water softening plant doesn't solve the salt problem in itself. What it does is it provides us with softer water with the hopes that by providing a better water quality, we can eliminate the individual water softeners. Option B, we looked at replacing the self-generating water softeners with cartridge type water softeners. So instead of discharging the salt into the sewer, we would have cartridges that are exchanged periodically. The concern that we have with this option, after investigating this and talking to Culligan and other folks that provide these type of cartridge water softeners, is that they rarely see water hardness like we have in San Juan Bautista, and there's a concern that the cartridge exchanges would be very frequent and would make this option somewhat impractical. And then the third option we looked at was importing water from the West Hills Water Treatment Plant. This water treatment plant is owned and operated by the San Benito County Water District. So we've been in discussions with them about what it would take to import better quality surface water that's treated surface water, and blend that with our well water to get our salt concentrations down to an acceptable level. And then there was a fourth option that was kind of booted early, and that would be to import untreated water from the water district and build our own water treatment plant. But we immediately recognized that that would cost about $10 million just for the water treatment plant, and it didn't make sense didn't make economic sense when you compare it to the cost of purchasing the water that is treated at the West Hills Water Treatment Plant. Next slide.
So, and also, Steve, Jeff Catano has joined us tonight. So if people have questions about the blue valve and that type of issue, or anything related to the water district, Jeff can help us answer questions as we go.
So so for each of these options, we went through and did a cost analysis. We looked at the construction engineering, what we call the capital cost. We also looked at the O&M cost and provided a present worth analysis to kind of come up with a total life cycle cost over 20 years. But the first thing I want to point out with this table is that in order to do a apples-to-apples comparison between these three options, we have to consider the fact that right now we have two existing wells that are operating. Well number one, our primary source, cannot supply enough water to meet our water demand. If well number 5, if we lose well number 5, whether it's for maintenance or because we have a nitrate problem with that well, we've got a problem. And so we explored other sources of water and identified, thanks to Jeff over at the Water District, there's an existing well over near Meadowbell Road. And so we looked at the water quality of that well. We'd have to get into a purchase agreement for this water from the owner of that well. The water quality is similar to our existing well, so we'd have to provide treatment for iron and manganese removal. So when you add up the cost of constructing the pipeline to that well, treatment for iron and manganese removal, a rough guess at the O&M cost for purchasing the water from the owner of the well, you end up with a cost. And then when you compare that with what we call that water security cost, and you compare that to the option with the West Hills Water Treatment Plant, you can see that the costs are similar. Option C, the West Hills Water Treatment, is still not the least cost alternative, but there are other factors that need to be taken into consideration. And so there's also non-monetary factors. So on the next slide, Don, thank you. So some of the other criteria that we looked at for making a selection, in addition to the life cycle costs, was to look at the footprint, the ease of operation and maintenance, reliability. The West Hills Water Treatment Plant would provide a higher quality, very reliable source of water. And it would help as far as, it's probably concerning future regulations and stuff like that. There's we believe there's more flexibility with that option. And so when you consider all these criteria and the relative weighting of the importance of each of these criteria, we come up with the highest score for the West Hills Water Treatment Plant. So, so as far as source control, our recommended project is to import water from the West Hills Water Treatment Plant, and so the water balance calculations are to take about on average about 60% of our water from there, combine it with our well water. We think that'll give us a high enough quality water that will help us as far as reducing the salt concentrations. Next slide. So here's a kind of a connection map, and you can see that the West Hills Water Treatment Plant is located near Hollister, and then we'd have to construct about a 6-mile water pipeline and tie into our water distribution system. We wouldn't have to provide a pump station because you can see that the topography allows itself that we could flow by gravity through this pipeline. This pipeline, we show us the 12-inch. When we get to the detailed design on this, there's potential that this pipeline can be smaller, 8 inches. So we're using a conservative estimate right now for the pipeline, but if we have adequate storage with the water distribution system, we believe that this pipeline could be smaller. Next slide. Okay, so that's kind of the first part of our investigation. The second part is, okay, now what about wastewater improvements? And so we looked at 3 alternatives for this. And so the first alternative had to do with what do we have to do as far as on-site wastewater treatment of the existing plant, and that combined with the off-site source control, in this case, the preferred option being the West Hills Water, importing water from the West Hills Treatment Plant. What would that take? The existing, as Don mentioned, the cities had to put a lot of money into the existing treatment plant to keep it operating. There some problems have been fixed, but there's other problems. The existing plant is at or beyond its published design capacity, and so it would be necessary to upgrade this plant regardless. And there are a number of issues that the regional board has pointed out about this plant also. So Alternative one would be to upgrade the existing plant with a newer technology membrane bioreactor plant. And this would provide a higher level of treatment, but the MBR plant by itself still is not a full solution for removing salt. It's a solution for upgrading the plant to comply with organic loading and all the other constituents. Alternative two would be, hey, we really can't do source control, so let's remove the salt at the existing wastewater treatment plant, and that would require upgrading to the membrane bioreactor plant, and then adding another treatment process, most likely reverse osmosis on this, and that can be relatively expensive because the reverse osmosis system concentrates the salt into the salt brine, and then you have to, your major cost is the disposal of the salt brine that's created from that. And then the final option that we looked at was, maybe it makes sense to regionalize, get out of the wastewater treatment business altogether, build a pump station and pipeline, and pump our wastewater over to the Hollister wastewater treatment plant. They have a state-of-the-art MBR treatment plant there, and they have capacity. The only issue with sending our wastewater to the Hollister plant is they've told us that we do have to remove at least some of the salt that's in our wastewater so that they can stay in compliance with their effluent discharge. So we'd still have to deal with source water, and so this recommendation looks at the using offsite salinity control, with the preferred alternative being the West Hills, imported water from the West Hills water treatment plant. Next slide. Okay, so when we go through this and do the life cycle cost analysis, again, you can see that there's a range of costs as far as life cycle cost. Sending water to the Hollister plant and combined with the West Hills, importing water from the West Hills water treatment plant has a higher life cycle cost. But then when you look at a lot of the intangibles here, the non-monetary costs, Don, if you want to go to the next slide, there are a lot of other factors with this in addition to life cycle cost. If we were to do a treatment at the existing wastewater treatment plant, we'd have to purchase additional property to deal with the evaporation basin we'd have to build for the salt brine and other things, and that would increase so there's a factor of footprint, operational simplicity, getting us out of the wastewater treatment business and letting the city of Hollister do that favors that alternative. They have a very robust and reliable plant, and they're likely to continue to comply with future regulations. So when you factor in these criteria and the relative weighting of these criteria, you come up with a selection of the Hollister wastewater treatment plant and the West Hills water treatment as the recommended alternative in our report. Next slide. And so just in summary, the improvement project recommendations would be as follows. Implement an industrial pretreatment program to reduce some of the salt from the industrial discharges. We consider that the low-hanging fruit. Install a new sewage pump station and pipeline to the Hollister wastewater treatment plant. Decommission the existing plant and convert one of the ponds there to an equalization basin for the pump station that helps reduce the cost of the pump station and the pipeline. And then install a potable water line from the West Hills water treatment plant to the city of Benicia, and then begin a program to buy back and eliminate the domestic water softeners. And next slide. And as Don mentioned, we've made application with the USDA, and this is the schedule that we presented in our preliminary injury report for them to consider that we would go through these steps and then ultimately bring us into compliance with these improvements phased in by 2023. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Don to talk about the next steps.
Thank you, Steve. That was great. A lot of information to share. It's a complicated topic. But I'm comfortable that we've looked at every viable option. So I hope the public has some questions and comments about that. But just a few more slides and then we can get to the questions.
Okay.
The key compliance deadlines associated with the EPA and their AOC consent compliance order. November 15, 2020, we submitted a schedule for phase 1 of the compliance project. And that also includes a financial plan that later in our AOC will actually conduct a feasibility study. So we'll talk about the feasibility of our plan based on the different resources that we can put together. There's a lot of negotiating to occur between now and then. So the numbers that we see today are simply estimates. And this allows us time through the end of December to get these feasibility and financial plans in order. We'll have a schedule by December 31st for phase 2 of the compliance project, which gets into a little bit of the design. And then phase 3, August 1, 2022 is when we hope we'll be ready to initiate construction. So this is an ambitious schedule, but we think it's doable and it gets us in compliance with the December 21 deadline. And the EPA is flexible with some of these dates. So if we get into a third-party negotiations and we can't resolve an agreement to start on time, we can move these around a little bit as long as we don't move the end date. So, so these different phases. Phase 1 is select the compliance project by next week, October 15th. Establish a finance plan by November 15th, and try and qualify for every grant loan possible that we can use to leverage the USDA application that was submitted September 30th. Partnering with the San Benito Water District is one of those examples of how we can work together on a regional level and share the solution moving forward, both in terms of maintenance and operations and financially. Phase 2 deadline, December 2020. Submit a schedule to include the fiscal feasibility study, as I said, and to begin negotiating the third-party agreements in the CEQA and build-out. Phase 3 is the project design, and then we get into construction. So the biggest question that concerns me personally, and I'm sure concerns the residents that are listening tonight, is who pays the cost. And the users of the water system, the residents, business owners, and industrial contributors will continue to pay through rates. And we're also doing a rate study. So the outcome of our compliance project selection will influence the rate study. And the rate study will come out hopefully in December or January to help inform the process. This is going to tell the USDA if we have the capacity to repay loans, for example. These loans are at 1.4% interest and spread over 40 years. So they're quite a good program that the USDA is offering. Maybe more programs will come available from the federal government to help with infrastructure. They're way overdue for that kind of help for local government. So we have some time to let that happen. Qualifying as a disadvantaged community will open new grant opportunities from the state. So please turn in your household income surveys today. Establishing regional partnerships, as I said, with the water district, the city of Hollister, the county. There's opportunities to help the county get people off of septic and buy into our sewer line going to Hollister. So that would help the groundwater situation. That would help some of the people that are currently on septic systems to join in to our program in Hollister. So there's ways that we can partner and work together to find a solution so San Juan Bautista is not by itself. It's then the time needed to repay any new debt. So that's an option for us. And that would reduce the immediate spikes and increased rates should that be needed to help us pay for our program. Take advantage of the low interest rates and refinance the debt after 5 years. So right now we're paying them quite a bit of money per year on the current debt, and if we can refinance that, that would be really helpful. So other potential outcomes, being kind of candid here, we're going to have better water. The water is going to taste better. It's going to be better to drink. Maybe at someday Brewery 25 will be able to brew their beer using our water. We will most likely have higher monthly water bills. And as soon as we know that, as soon as we get our numbers together in order, beyond estimates, we'll be able to share that information hopefully on the first of the year. We will have more secure water sources. For the first time, the city will be partnering to provide water rather than on its own. And those partnerships will provide a more secure water source for our community. It simplifies the city's operations, reducing our operations and maintenance burden from a 4-part system to a 2-part system. So this is a big step in simplifying the way we do business. We have 8 full-time employees and half of them are dedicated to our maintenance and operations. Focusing on aging pipes and pumps and valves, this allows us to use our staff to focus on the collection system and the distribution system. And that they really do need attention. I think everyone agrees with that. And just one word of caution is if we are successful in making these changes and moving forward with a more secure water source and a more reliable way of discharging our wastewater, it may be considered to be growth inducing. So we will have a in-depth CEQA process and CEQA hearings and environmental review that's going to answer the question if the compliance projects will induce growth. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a potential outcome of our hard work. And with that, we're more than happy to answer questions. Control 9 if you're using your phone, or type a question in chat. And
There are some questions in chat. Right
are there?
now.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And then okay, so we'll go through the chat questions and raise your hand as you do. And we'll try and get everyone's feedback tonight. That's the whole purpose of the meeting. Okay.
So Daniel Fernandez asks, is the West Hills water expected to gain in salinity at some point?
So,
Beth is here.
Don,
So you'll answer the question?
Thank you.
so Don, you want me to take that answer?
Sure. Go ahead, Jeff. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah. So no, the West Hills Water Treatment Plant water is going to the salinity and the TDS in that is expected to stay the same. The water quality coming out of the Delta is not expected to change anytime in the future. In fact, we never expected to change. The sources of that water are the same. Most of it's from Shasta, Folsom, and other reservoirs, and that is not expected to change anytime in the future.
So if I can just add one more point, it's a surface water supply, which is less hard than groundwater. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. The water quality, the TDS from the water coming out of the Delta is that the water district receives is typically around 250 parts per million. So it's significantly less than the water that you're pumping out of the ground. The water you're pumping out of the ground is probably close to 900 to 1,000.
Thanks, Jeff. So then Cara asks, and I believe this was answered, where does the West Hills Water Treatment Plant get their water from?
Yeah, and he answered that.
Central Valley Project water, basically it's the same water that the State Water Project gets. It comes from Northern California through the Delta, and it's exported from the Delta up into San Luis Reservoir. And then we bring it from San Luis Reservoir through a pipeline that brings it directly to San Benito County.
Thank you.
Another.
Cara's next question, Hollister is growing with many new housing developments. How can we be sure that their wastewater treatment plant won't reach capacity? And where will this leave us then?
The city of Hollister's wastewater treatment plant was originally designed to be about 4.5 MGD. They did some upgrades recently with new membranes. It increased the capacity. They're actually running right now at about, I think at about 2.2 million gallons per day. So they could double the capacity at that plant right now and not have any issues at all. the plant was originally designed to be double the capacity that it was. So it can go up to about, I believe, 9 million gallons a day. So it's going to be very, very long time before that plant is ever going to see that it's going to reach the maximum capacity that it was designed for.
And do you know what our capacity is currently at our wastewater plant?
We're running about 180,000 gallons, so we're a drop in the bucket. Our capacity, as I recall, and Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about 250,000, so about 250,000.
Yeah, so right. So it's we have a permanent capacity of 270,000 gallons a day, but because of the when the plant was originally designed, the organic concentrations, the BOD, TSS, and stuff were much lower. So when you run the numbers now, we're really at capacity with that tree, even though we have less flow because of water conservation and other measures. The organic loading is we're near capacity or at capacity right now. So it's so we're in a situation where there isn't any more capacity available from the existing wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you. And one more from Caravanc. Won't these pipelines have to go through ag land? What will the impact there be?
So the San Benito County Water District already has easements through all of those ag lands. And the intention would be to put the pipeline parallel to the existing pipelines that the water district has. There would be some small section towards the end of the pipeline alignment that would have to be easements that were acquired. But for the majority of the pipeline alignment that was shown in the map that was shown previously, the water district already owns those easements, so there wouldn't be an issue with that.
Thank you. Jose Bernal, given that the city of San Juan Bautista is most likely going to be receiving water from the West Hills Water Treatment Plant, and this water is less hard, but hard nonetheless, than the San Juan water wells, will the city of San Juan attempt to discourage the use of water softeners, either through a ban, an extra water charge, or some other mechanism?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. And the recommendation in the report right now is to institute a buyback program where we phase out these water softeners. If we can reach a goal of eliminating 50% of the total number of water softeners in town, I think we can get ourselves back into compliance. And so yes, the answer is yes, that the goal would be with the better water quality, it would not be necessary for individual homeowners to have water softeners.
Steve, can I add something to that?
Sure.
So the water coming from the West Hills Water Treatment Plant is not, and what we've seen from the city of Hollister and Sunny Slope County Water District residents and water users is that when we've transferred over to the West Hills and the less salt water treatment plant water using surface water, there have been overall acceptance of that water and willingness to get rid of the water softener. The customers have acknowledged and are willing to get rid of their water softeners and don't have an issue with the hardness. It is not the softest water in California. It's not Hetch Hetchy water, but it is significantly better and totally acceptable that you do not need to have a water softener, and it's unnecessary.
Thank you. Zoe Diggory has her hand raised.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, this is Zoe Diggory. I am a homeowner in San Juan at 3 Donner Street. First, I want to thank you for that really clear and concise presentation. It's very encouraging to see all the different alternatives that were explored. And I actually work for a water district. And so it's really encouraging that we're looking at these partnerships because supplying water is a real struggle for a lot of small communities in California. It's basically exceeds what we can do in terms of costs for our small communities to, through taxes and things like that, to afford to maintain and upgrade these kinds of systems. So I really appreciate that regional perspective. A few questions. What does Hollister do with their wastewater? And how would we be more or less insured from any of their potential compliance issues?
Since the city of Hollister is not on this Zoom meeting, I can tell you that the San Benito County Water District has worked very closely with the city of Hollister for like the past 20 years on their wastewater issues. And that was what drove the Hollister Urban Area Water and Wastewater Master Plan, where the Water District worked with the city of Hollister to come up with a plan to address water and wastewater issues within the Hollister urban area. What they deal with, and what we recognized early on, was that there were options, and much the same options that you're looking at today. Do you want to look at demineralization, RO on the front end for your water supply? Do you want to look at RO on the back end for the wastewater? And ultimately, working with and Sunny Slope County Water District was in the same situation. They were under orders for their waste discharge orders that they were violating, and the ultimate solution was, out of all of those options, the same options that you're looking at, was fix the water going into the city and Sunny Slope County Water District, and on the back end, build a water treatment plant that would treat the water to the quality that is able to be discharged. What's happening with their water right now with the city of Hollister is that the majority of their water during the growing season is delivered to the San Benito County Water District because the water quality has been improved such that it is acceptable to use for recycled water on irrigated crops. Prior to the West Hills Water Treatment Plant and less salt water treatment plants being built and implemented, the water quality at the wastewater treatment plant was such that it was too salty to be able to be used for recycled water. So the majority of that water now is being able to be recycled and reused and used twice. So that was one of the covenants that we looked at when we wanted to build this project, was how can you use this imported water that we're bringing into the county and use it twice? And basically, rather than just delivering it to agriculture and not using it for the city of Hollister and Sunny Slope, you can, if you deliver it to the city of Hollister and Sunny Slope, you can actually deliver it to the residents. It comes through the system, it gets recycled, and then it's able to be reused for recycled water for crops. What's going to end up happening with the San Juan Bautista's wastewater, it'll be a small increment of that water that ends up getting used in that process. But that water during the growing months will end up getting used as recycled water for irrigated crops. In the wintertime, when there's no demand for irrigated crops, that water ends up being discharged back into the water basin, and it ends up being used to help recharge the basin. The water quality going back into the basin now is much better than it was previously, and it's actually increasing and improving the water quality in the basin in San Juan Valley.
Thank you. Do I have the opportunity to have another question?
Sure.
Great. You included an alternative looking at sort of the amount of salt that leaves our homes, and you looked at an alternative that would require individual homeowners and to get these cartridges. What about alternatives to salts? If you were looking at a program that would supply cartridges to residents, is there an alternative to salts that we could use in our water softeners that would help solve the problem or help ameliorate the problem a little bit?
Yeah, I think that conversations with Culligan and other manufacturers of these water softeners, there are some newer technologies. The we kind of focused on what was out there and what's tried and proved. And for some communities, installing these cartridge water softeners has been very successful. But again, the concern that we came across with this is that when you run the, how often you have to replace these cartridges, it's very frequent when you get really hard water like we have in San Juan Bautista. So that was a concern. It's and then also the challenge of working with the individual homeowners to redo the plumbing, redoing these, putting their water softeners in, and then ultimately having the homeowner responsible for this would be a challenge, of course.
Sorry, and I guess to be a little bit clearer, so I use potassium I have a water softener,
Right.
and I use potassium, and I don't know if that is not really part of the solution, but is something like that an easier way for residents to be part of a solution that would be more affordable or more implementable for individual residents?
As of right now, we don't have a discharge limit for potassium, so that might be that could be a potential solution. I think that I think our conclusion was that there's a whole host of logistic problems with that option. But yeah, I'm aware of the water softeners that use potassium. That's a much better solution than dumping the sodium chloride into the sewer system for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome. Okay.
Anyone else?
I don't see their hand raised, but Dave Medeiros asks, what will happen to the SJB wells and wastewater treatment plant after we switch over to Hollister?
Well, one of the and I'll speak to this first, and then maybe Don can follow up. But the location of the existing wastewater treatment plants is a convenient location to build the new pump station, because all of the city's wastewater is collected at that point. Part of that plant we want to reuse. There's some existing ponds at this plant, and one of the things with having a centralized pumping facility and then pumping almost 6 miles to Hollister, we want to have the ability, if there's an issue with the pump station, for whatever reason it's down, we want to have a place to divert wastewater on a temporary basis. So it's desirable to have like an emergency storage basin. And then also, if we design it with an equalization basin, we can reduce the size of the pump station, how much you pump, reduce the size of the diameter of the pipeline, and save some costs there. So we would take advantage of the infrastructure that we have there, and just demolish the some of the process equipment. So that would be that site would be the location of the city central pump station that pumps wastewater to the Hollister wastewater treatment plant.
So we would save money in operations and maintenance because we wouldn't be running that facility, but it would still be there in case of emergency. Also, the proposal is to blend our current well water with the San Benito, the West Hills imported water. And the more we can do that, the less it will cost our ratepayers. So we want to keep our wells up and running and with emergency power and so forth, so that they're reliable, and it's a blended source of water for our residents, not solely reliant just on the West Hills source. So they would stay in business, but they wouldn't be as busy.
They'd be kind of dormant.
Caravonc, the West Hills water is only 60%, so will it still be somewhat hard when mixed with our wells?
I think that was at this point we thought that maybe 60% would be an acceptable blend. We certainly believe the water would be softer, of course, but we're not it's not cast in stone. Once you have the pipeline in place and can import the water, it's it's a relatively small amount of water. We're estimating 200,000 gallons a day of this water, at least initially. And then, it might turn out that it has to be 65%. It's kind of one of those things that we have some flexibility to figure out what the appropriate blend is to satisfy the citizens.
Okay, thanks.
The water balance, the salt balance calculations say if we take 60% of this water and use the well water, it'll help us get into compliance. So that's another reason that percentage was used.
Steve, I might want to add something. The Hollister urban area project is based on about a 60 to 70% blend also, and that's been acceptable to the residents in the city and Sunny Slope.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for mentioning that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I have
Okay.
questions.
Okay, good.
Do we
Thank
want to go
you.
to council members first?
We have just one statement from Rachel. Too.
Okay. Or do you want to hold council till the end?
We can get done with the public,
Okay.
and then we'll go on to council.
Okay, Dan, if you can hang on for a moment. Dan, hang on for a moment. Zoe asks, what would offsite salinity control consist of, and where would something like that be sited?
The question was on-site, if we did on-site treatment. Yeah, that if I understand the question right, on-site treatment, that option would be adding reverse osmosis or a similar process. And that's a fairly expensive treatment. But the real cost with doing the reverse osmosis, you end up removing the salt and concentrating into this, if you want to call it a salt brine, and that has to be disposed of. And so communities that have RO systems, that ends up being a major cost for them, is the brine disposal. And we estimate that, some people say, well, you can do well injection. Nobody's been successful really doing that. If you're going to transport it off site, you want to concentrate it, dry it. And so you would build evaporation ponds, and that would require some additional land than what we have. So it makes in addition to the cost of treatment, we'd also have to purchase additional property, at the treatment plant site. So that makes that option, less desirable, more expensive.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, do you want to read Rachel's?
Sure, go ahead, Mayor. So we have a written comment.
We have a written comment here, and it's addressed to Mayor Mary Edge, City Council, and City Manager. I would like to comment on the city water issue that will be discussed at your town hall meeting Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. I feel the residents have been very patient concerning our water problems and have had to pay very high water bills. Therefore, an oversight committee is needed to hold the City Council and City Manager accountable to whatever program the council decides to put in place to finally improve the city's water problems. Please give my request some serious consideration. I feel it would be a positive way to gain support and trust of our city government by the city's residents. Thank you, Rachel Ponce. Does anybody have anything to add to her?
Yes, he's gonna reach out.
Okay.
Are there more questions? I see Jackie has her hand up.
Okay, do you want to go to Jackie?
Sure, Jackie?
Hi, good evening. Just hearing what Rachel just said, I think an oversight committee would be an excellent idea. you know, the water issue has been a long going issue for many years. And I agree, we are paying, you know, high charges for the water that we can't drink. And with that being said, you talked about a little bit about a buyback program for water softeners. What about along the lines with that, considering supplying reverse osmosis kits for our tap water that would save us having to buy water, which we already do. Most of us buy bottled water, you know, weekly. We don't drink the tap water. Some people have water softeners. We got rid of ours years ago. But what about considering that? Since the 60% doesn't sound like it's a, you know, it's a definite, you know, statistic. It could be worse. We don't know. You could end up with the same kind of hard water or water that doesn't taste that well. That's just my suggestion or my question. Thank you.
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind is these individual RO units. Again, any reverse osmosis system is going to remove the minerals from the water, which is a good thing for drinking. But then it has to be disposed of, right? And so those, I think some of those systems might end up putting that concentrated salt right back in the sewer, anyways. So I'm not sure that would be a solution for the wastewater compliance, you know, as far as eliminating the salt. Maybe some of these systems, this salt gets, you know, like the cartridge softeners, maybe there's an option for removing the salt that way. I'm not entirely sure, but again, you know, any of these solutions like this with the individual water softeners, RO units and stuff like that, gets into some logistic challenges, because then you got to get very high participation from all the citizens to want to do that, and then you got to come up with a solution that works as far as removing the salt, and that's the whole trick with this, is we've got to remove the salt.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yep.
From the public?
Yep. JL writes, I was told that the survey was only sent to city residents who get a water bill from the city of San Juan Bautista. Apartment households did not get a survey. Do you know what the percentage of use is for apartment households that use water from the city?
That's a very good question, and we took that into consideration when we put our contract together with the nonprofit organization, Applied Survey Research. And right off the bat, the Gardens Apartments are one of those where the landlord receives the bill, and so the rest of the residents did not. And so we have budgeted and planned to go, if necessary, door to door, like the census. So we try the mail out ballots first. We've already received more than 100 responses, and we will get to door-to-door survey if necessary. I was asking the council to volunteer yesterday to help us knock on doors if we need to, in a safe, distancing, respectful manner, but to try and get as many responses as we can. So we recognize that issue and we planned for it, and I appreciate you pointing that out and bringing it up tonight.
Thank you.
Zoe, some of these alternatives have been bouncing around for years. Where would the upfront funding come from to make them realities?
So the USDA program is a combination of a grant and a loan. And so I would think some of the upfront money, a majority of it would come from the grant. We've already worked on some funding models with the San Bernardino Water District, and there's a potential to have some upfront money coming from their contribution as well. So there's at least two sources for the upfront money to get things started.
And the final comment that I see is from Irvin's iPad that says, I agree with Jackie.
Oversight.
Okay, okay. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. So now we'll go on to our city council members. I believe, Dan, did you have a comment?
No, I have a question, a series of
Our
questions.
question. Okay.
And Jeff, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. How are you? First of all, thank you for being here, Jeff. I don't know, for those of you who do not know Jeff, he is a superstar in the water world. It's just amazing that San Bernardino County has him. He's an asset for our county, our community, and for our town. So I wanted to personally thank you for being here tonight, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
So here, Jeff, here's my question. Tell me where I am wrong with my question. It's going to cost a lot of money. And so I'll state this as a hypothesis. It's going to cost a lot of money to lay pipe from San Juan Bautista to West Hills for water supply. I want to focus this question on just water supply for the time being. It's going to take a lot of money to do that. Easements, pipe, installation, digging, all of that stuff. Why doesn't the city of San Juan Bautista commit a couple $100,000 to drilling our own amazing well at the mouth of the canyon? I know you, and I know that you know the aquifer in this area better probably than anybody in this area. Why don't we drill our own deep well, 800 to 1,000 feet, hit that aquifer, get good, pure, great water that will last this city forevermore, as opposed to embarking on a paradigm where we are going to be completely dependent upon Hollister. What's wrong with my reasoning?
What's wrong with your reasoning, Dan, is that the mouth of the canyon, you already have a well at the mouth of the canyon. That's well one. And that water is coming out of the canyon. In fact, I was the one that designed the rehabilitation on that well. You're going to be limited on the amount of water that's going to be available there. Once you're going to drill down deep into that aquifer, if you drill deeper than that well is located right now, you're going to be drilling into basically what you call a hard rock well. You're going to be limited on the amount of water that's available. I would not put my money and my bet on finding a well that has an unlimited capacity, because it just doesn't exist. You're going to ultimately, even if you do find pockets of good water, you're going to exhaust that at some point in the future. And it's not impossible to find pockets of good water. But what ends up happening is you drill into those pockets of good water, you start to draw those down, and what it does is it pulls in the bad water quality that's around it. You've seen that happen in your wells that you've got now. You've drilled wells out there or purchased wells that had the appearance of having better water quality. And after you've run those wells for a while, the water quality degraded, because what you've ended up doing is you've pulled the bad water quality of the aquifer around it into that well, because the water that you're pulling out has to get replaced by something, and it's getting replaced by bad water quality that's around it.
But Jeff, isn't two things. First, okay, don't get hung up on the location of a future City of San Juan Bautista well as being the mouth of the canyon only. I always thought that the aquifer in that area was pretty good. But let's just assume that in an area close to the City of San Juan Bautista, that's heck of a lot closer than the West Hills treatment plant, we could find an aquifer that would be amazing for this town. And I'm not talking about 300-400 feet, as I said, 800, 1,000 feet. If we go down past that layer where it's susceptible to nitrates and pulling in from other influences nearby, couldn't we do that? And Jeff, you know the well that Joe and I did at Anzar for Earthbound, and why couldn't we repeat that for the city? Instead of Earthbound having a well like that, why couldn't the city have a well like that?
You know, Dan, you might be able to do that, but you're still going to ultimately end up with a limit on the water quality. We thought we were going to be able to do that with the Bedabel well.
Yes.
And that's what we tried to do at the Bedabel well. And that was like the best shot that we thought we had. There's the water quality out there had every indication that was probably the best place to drill a well. And what ended up happening was it wasn't really any better than the wells that you've got today. You still ended up with iron and manganese problems, and the TDS wasn't significantly better than what you've got today.
So we could maybe solve the quantity issue if we did our own well, but you're thinking, or you're more concerned with the quality issue.
Absolutely. I mean, quantity is not an issue, Dan. I mean, there's the quantity of water out there in San Juan Valley is not a problem. There's a ton of water out there. It's the quality of the water that you're dealing with.
And I always thought, maybe mistakenly so, that if we just went deep enough, you can mitigate a lot of those quality concerns. No, that's not logical.
You know, like I said, there are pockets of water that if you go deep enough and out to the edge, that you're going to find good water. There's if you go, you know, out towards McAlpine Lake, there's pockets of good water out there, but there's nothing that we've seen that indicates that long term you're going to be able to use that. You're going to exhaust that pocket of water at some point, and you're going to end up with the same water quality that you've got in the general basin.
I see. Okay. Well, thanks, Jeff. And just for everyone who's listening, anyone that drills a well in San Benito County has to submit paperwork to Jeff. So it's pretty fair to say that Jeff knows a lot more about the wells in this county than maybe he wants to know. So he's like Wikipedia for wells. Thank you, Jeff.
All right.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, so now we'll go on to Councilman Freeman. Do you have a question or any comment?
Yes, I have quite a few comments. Number one, a lot of people know that I was an industrial water treatment chemist for well over 20 years, and I drove up and down not only the Central Valley, but also the Salinas Valley and the San Juan Valley. And I can tell you, when I did cooling tower water treatment for Unicool and Growers Ice down in Salinas, they had a TDS of 600 to 700 on their makeup water in Salinas. I can tell you, when I went to Marina, they had a makeup of 600 to 700 TDS in their makeup water. The Central Coast, the wells on the Central Coast, same with Monterey, except theirs was 1,000, more like ours. The Central Coast has hard water, high mineral content water up and down the Central Coast. We just don't live in a good place for groundwater. So if we want good water quality, which we should, if you want good tasting water, which we should, which the residents of this town deserve, we need to use the West Hills Water Treatment Plant. A 4 or 5 mile pipeline is nothing. Ulster has probably 100 miles of pipeline. You know, cities like Los Angeles have literally thousands of miles of pipeline. Building a 5 mile pipeline is not, from an engineering point of view, a big deal. So we need to get over this as like it's foreign. It's not. We pay taxes at the state level for that Central Valley Project water, and we don't get to use any of it. I'd like to see us get to use it. It's much higher quality. Not only your glasses, your stemware, your silverware will lose that fog and haze they have now. It'll be drinkable, and your water heaters will last 15 years instead of 7. So the advantages of having higher quality water are just numerous. And I too would like to thank Jeff. Jeff knows that Jeff and I was on the Water Resources Board several years ago. And when I took a tour of the West Hills Water Treatment Plant, I think it was in November of 2017 when it first opened, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong on the date there. You know, I said that this is the answer. This is the answer for our ongoing water problems. And I've lived here since 2001, and I've known about the water problems since that date. And I've known that we've had issues with the State Water Board since 2006. And now Don told me he found correspondence with the previous city manager from 2001 or 2. So we've had at least 20 years, you know, and the State Water Board is losing its patience. We're going to, yes, it's going to cost some money. I think it's going to be quite a bit cheaper than what the estimates give. I'm being a little optimistic here, but I would remind Dan that the easements are already in place. Literally, all we have to do is engineer it and dig the ditch, which is not that expensive. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councilman Flores, do you have any questions, any comments?
No questions. comment. Thank you for sharing all that information, bringing it up to date to our community. There's a lot of questions asked and been answered. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Jordan.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff, for all of your input. Thanks to Standek and Tony and Carl, everybody who's been working ad nausea on this project. Thanks, Don. We've got some amazing projects to think about. And Dan, to go off of what you were saying about wells, there's nothing saying that we can't drill another well at some other point to help improve our water quality or quantity or whatever, but to get something done on an immediate basis to figure out a project. I mean, we can always have that in our back pocket.
Yeah.
There are some other comments coming in on.
Well, we need to give them the opportunity.
Yeah, if you want to go with whatever you have to say, and we'll go back to the computer.
I just wanted to thank Steve and Tony and Jeff, everyone, Carl, for your expertise and for all the hard work that you've done, and for keeping us informed. John, Councilman Freeman, and Vice Mayor Jordan have worked with you, and it's been very helpful. It's at least opened my eyes. And Dan, I agree with you. I had thought of that, but I think this is an easier solution to our problem. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Don, also. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out.
I'm just doing my job, man. That's what you hired me to do.
I know.
Madam Mayor, can I just add a comment to what you and the Vice Mayor just said? And because I agree with you both, but I think we were all sitting there when the city paid a lot of money for Dale Koch's well. City Manager Reynolds, how much did we pay for Dale Koch's well when we were said and done with the whole thing? What did that well cost us?
Well, the cash out of pocket was about 200,000, as I recall, to swap wells. And then we stumbled into the need for the treatment plant. Then we discovered that we were in the floodplain. The whole project is closer to 700,000 when it's done.
Yeah.
Which the drinking water says that's about the average cost.
Yeah.
So $700,000 spent on what I think Jeff doesn't have to comment on this, but I know Jeff Catania, and he would agree that is not a $700,000 well. So it just pains me to see the city spending that kind of money in the past. Hopefully we're on a new trajectory going forward.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we've got the right professionals and the right advice. And the last thing I'll say is just from a kind of a philosophical, I've only lived here for 30 years, but I feel like I've lived here for 3 generations. And just the idea of San Juan Bautista becoming wholly dependent upon Hollister for water and wastewater treatment just doesn't sit well with me, because I know San Juan Bautista in its history, it's always been a town that could stand on its own 2 feet.
Right.
And, hitching our wagon to our neighboring city to the east forever, man, if there was some opportunity for us to be autonomous and independent and not dependent on another town, that sure would be preferable to me. But again, that's just philosophical, and maybe it doesn't line up with the facts on the ground. I don't know.
Dan, I want to correct you there. You're not hitching your wagon to the city of Hollister. You're hitching your wagon to the San Benito County Water District that has the responsibility for water and water resources for the entire county. Your wastewater disposal would be dependent upon the city of Hollister. But in my opinion, that's the smartest decision to make, is to get out of the business of wastewater disposal and process and ship it to the city of Hollister, where they've got a regional plant. And that was the design of that plant originally. And everybody's intention was that would be a regional plant. And the water that you're going to be receiving is not dependent upon the city of Hollister. It's going to be dependent upon the San Benito County Water District. And we're committed to the entire county, not just the city of Hollister.
That's a great clarification, Jeff. I think just geographically where the wastewater or the West Hills treatment plant is located, it just feel a lot more comfortable to me if it was right outside on our doorstep than it is theirs. You know what I mean? But I understand your point.
That's the thing about a regional plant, Dan, is it can't be in front of everybody's doorstep.
Well said. Well said.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
And that's a good point, Jeff. Hetch Hetchy water comes from SFPUC and goes all the way to the East Bay out to Sunol. So it would be something similar to that. I also agree with Dan. It's nice to be on your own.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, having said that, Zoe writes in, San Juan has existing water problems to solve, but also a future to adapt to and ideally thrive under. This will require water supply redundancy, imported water to improve quality, local water when imported water is unreliable. Water from the Delta is increasingly unreliable, especially in drought years, and recycled wastewater to make the best use of this precious resource. Thank you for that, Zoe. Urban asks of Jeff, what is your title? If you can please remind everybody what your title is.
I'm the general manager for the San Benito County Water District and the district engineer.
Thank you for that. Vanda Gilbert says, so glad you were present to share your professional expertise. That's to Zoe.
Oh,
thanks, Zoe. Jackie Morris, has a decision already been made or more favorable by those that will decide this? I really like Mrs. Ponce's comment or idea about community oversight committee for overall water issues.
we have to decide by next week.
Yeah, we're on deadline
We're on a
constraints.
deadline.
Don, if you want
Yeah.
to address that,
Can
please.
you?
So that's what the administrative order is from the EPA. It's an agreement that we signed up for that gives us a strict deadline of October 15th. As conditions and information improves with our industrial users, we might be able to find reason to push it out, but the better we keep to our schedule, the more trust we build and the more confidence we build between our partners moving forward. So I think it's feasible to make this decision. If we have to change our mind, we have to change our mind, as we dig into the details, but it's a starting point.
Okay. Anyone else?
Jackie, your question was answered. Who is speaking? Jeff is who, title and representing who. And Urban says, thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Commentary there.
Okay.
I see nothing else on the
Okay.
board.
All right. So,
Jackie asked, so what is the decision,
The
please?
decision will be made next Tuesday.
The decision will be made next Tuesday with all of the input from all of you folks who attended and asked questions from the council, from our city manager, and from all of the input and time that was from all of our consultants, along with the San Benito County Water District. Thank you.
okay. So any final comments from anybody? From our council members? Okay. So, Don, did you want to say anything?
Well,
Before we end?
if members, this is a lot of information. And so our Rochelle Egan, our PIO has built a website just for this topic. It includes all of these reports and details on our website. It's easy to find. As soon as you open your website for the city, you'll find the link that goes to all of these reports and details. So that's all there for people to view and consider. Please feel free to send us emails or phone calls, and we'll receive that information between now and next Tuesday and provide it to the city council as they deliberate on this super important decision next Tuesday.
Right. And then
Jackie's hand is raised.
I would like to encourage anybody from the public having any questions regarding our water to call Dawn
Sure.
or to call Leslie, our vice mayor, and our councilman, John Freeman, because they've been involved in all of this. And so they are very well informed. So, you know, they could possibly answer some of your questions.
Jackie has her hand raised.
Jackie?
Oh, last question. So if the decision is made based on what you heard tonight and what your studies have resulted in, the advantages over one option and the other, and it leads to connection to the San Benito County Regional Water District, will that translate to lower water rates for us, the citizens of San Juan Bautista? Is that been considered? Is it something that you can say yay or nay at this point?
I don't think we can answer the question on water rates just yet. Is that correct, Don?
Yeah, the numbers are quite preliminary, and so are the funding sources. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be closer to that. I don't know that the rates will be going down.
Would they be going up?
We're
We don't know.
Yeah, we're going to do our best to minimize that. So, and we have options there as well. So we'll come back with a full report and feasibility study for the city council, and we'll have more details and more information at that point.
Tony or Steve, do we actually have a cost of how much a gallon of water cost?
From the West Hills Water Treatment Plant?
From our city and from both.
Well, you know, Jeff can probably answer that better than I can. We have, for planning purposes, we have a PLUD number in there of about $1,500 per acre foot, but that's a combination of the cost for treatment, raw water, and we believe it's Jeff, would you agree, a somewhat conservative number at this time, but it's kind of a catch-all cost.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The actual cost of water, treated water, is pennies. If you know, you've got basically 326,000 gallons of water per acre foot, it's costing you $1,500 for the cost of the water and the treatment from the treatment plant. So I mean, you're looking at pennies per gallon. You know, if you're going to try to compare it to what it costs to buy a gallon of treated water at the grocery store, it's a bargain. So.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So I would like to add one quick thing. Jackie also asked the cost of our present water. It's about a half a cent per gallon, 0.05 or 0.005, excuse me.
0.00, yeah.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, so do we have any other questions before we leave? Because I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Okay, thank you guys again, the water team. Thank you so very much. And all of you community members that came today, thank you for your attendance. This meeting is over.